seriously, there are some presents here for you, and in there are some vouchers, and I think when you open it and see how much the vouchers are for, you'll be really... There's also some other gifts here, and Sal, I'm going to make you stand up here.
Yeah, don't kick them over. Which one?
And I understand, John, being the man that you are, you actually are partial to a bottle of champagne. So there's a bit more in there.
You can get that. Yeah, a bit of cap.
Before school starts, and to give people a chance to get their drinks topped up. John, I wish you all the very, very best in your retirement. May you be very happy for both of you. And thanks ever so much. It's been a pleasure.
Let me just rest it there, Callum, me.
Well, thanks for that, Jane. I possibly lived down to that introduction. It's true to say that Sally actually did have some concerns about our speech, but I managed to buy her off with a box of Maltesers. And if I start laughing halfway through, you're just going to have to bear with me, because don't forget that I know what's coming. Anyway, we're here tonight to talk about John. And one look at the turnout will tell you just how much of a crowd puller the rumour of a free bar. Can you hear me at the back? No. For those that don't know him as well as I do, I'm going to theme this tribute to him along the lines of Lummies yesterday. So that was a serious bit. So once again, if you all can prepare yourself to go back on a journey through time. John was born in 1780. The firstborn of the union between Jane Austen, owner of Pride and Prejudice, and Steve Austin, the $6 million man. He was born in East Hull, so God knows why he's supposed to have seen. But in the early 70s, he was something of a dandy about town, and he used to frequent such salubrious joints as Malcolm's, the Beer Keller, and for those with a really, really long memory, an illegal drinking den down Princess Dockside in Hull, which was called the Gotham Bay. Well, you won't like it, many of you. Anyway, he would often be seen strutting around the city centre in his Crombie and his bowler hat. His first job was at a local supermarket called Goodfellows, where he was put in charge of a large group of women. His second job was at Imperial Typewriters, where he was put in charge of a large group of women. His third job was in the civil service. Now at this point, I'm sure John would like me to have said that he was put in charge of a large group of prisoners. But sadly for him, no. He joined the prison service and was posted to Eden Road, our security nick. Promotion took him to the customs and the port of Dover, where he went to the EPU. And that will come as no comfort at all to some of his staff who, in later years, when he came back to Hull, he regularly rostered them to late Friday, Saturday and Sunday nights in international trade. So the joke's on you guys, because yes, he was EPU trained all the time. stay at Dover, he came back to Hull, and that was his next rung up the job ladder. And it was at that time that I first met John, and I have fond memories of playing alongside him. He was a bustling, never-say-die centre-forward for FC Portcullis. And during that team, the early days of the team, a friendship with John was bonded between he and I that's actually lasted right through to this day, I think it's fair to say. Whether that friendship will remain tonight, and that will be you live with the judge of that. But at the end of the 80s, it saw John move down to the docks, where his raw potential was identified by one Alan Hurst. Sadly, no longer is. But Hursty's fasting became a formidable opponent in those days to any would-be smuggler who had the misfortune to select Hull as his port of entry. If you got past Alan and then John, you would surely have been asked to bend over and part your cheeks by John fucking Dickie Fuckinson. Alan Hurst, always ahead of his time, saw intelligence, even in those early days, as the key to success in cracking the organised smuggling gangs aboard the Norland and the North Sea. So he gave his top two men, Austin and Dickinson, the very, very difficult job of recruiting a top-class informant. One who got his finger on the pulse and his ear to the ground. The lads knew who they wanted straight from the start. And they spared no effort or expense until they got their man. I'll never forget the look on Alan Hurst's face when they proudly introduced him to their new narc, Pete the Brush. Of course, with a top man like Pete on board, the jobs just rolled in. Drugs jobs, fag jobs, porn jobs. The newly opened custody suite became John's second home. If he wasn't in the office or the fish room, he knew where he'd be. He'd be in the custody suite, drinking, smoking and playing cards. Often with myself. Well, those were the halcyon days for the teams. But whereas John Dickey and Ian Curtis chose to spend their time updating their management profiles, John was always out there at the sharp end, enjoying beach barbies at Mappleton, praising off at Skellington, gyrating Jeff at Harrogate. Success after success followed, obviously, and he became known for his large heroin job that he managed to track down on the body of a Liverpool businessman. And his other claim to fame at the time was the identification of two people on his team. Two people, ladies and gentlemen, that would subsequently set the world alight a few years later. Yes, and I think they're both here tonight, guys. So if you'd like to take a bow, Hinge and Brackets! But all those things have come to an end, however, and in the mid-90s came that momentous occasion in John's life which was to change him forever. It made him the man who he is today. Indeed, would he have been here at all if it wasn't for this momentous occasion? We'll never know, but you all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, the new Inch Show.
That's so good. That's so good on salad.
When the off-record Customs beer fridge gave up the ghost, sometime later the writing was on the wall. What we didn't expect, though, was that writing would say HM Revenue and Customs and eventually UKBA. Shortly afterwards, he met Sally Gibson. After a long engagement, they married and honeymooned in Turkey. But it has to be said, it was a shotgun wedding in the end. They had to get married for pension purposes. And if you speak to John in a quiet moment, he'll still talk fondly of being dragged into the unmanned red lane at 3 o'clock in the morning at Manchester Airport. Having just come back from honeymoon, Sally was determined to pay the duty on her wedding ring and John's bloody watch. Well on today. Recent events have, however, persuaded John that it's time to go. There's been many changes, as most people in this room will have recognised. Sadly, we'll never know the outcome of the latest rumour, whether it was true or not. It was concerning targeting selection. Most of you won't know this, but for some time there have been mutterings amongst the top echelons that Cat A, B and C targets were going to be phased out. And what the management were talking about was introducing a different method of selection. They were going to trial it in Hull, of course. Andy Lund stuck his hand up, we'll do it, sir. It was going to be trialled, and it was going to be the department's method of combating the ever-decreasing workforce. They recognised that they couldn't constantly stick out only. So anyway, what they were looking for would be a much more credible, a much more robust, and therefore a much more successful method of targeting. Well, of course, as you will no doubt recognise when I come up with the answer, there was only one thing really that could tick all those boxes. Paul the Octopus. The superstar of the World Cup. Sadly, however, as many of you may know, Paul died suddenly in Germany last week, aged 2. Before I round off, I'd just like to say how good it is that so many faces from John's past, and indeed our own past, have made an effort to be here on John's Night of Nights. John came to their retirement dues, so they bloody well decided to get their own back and come to this. Some of you won't know them, of course, the younger crowd won't know a lot of the names from the past, but looking around there I can see officers from the past who hung up their torches many, many years ago. Men such as Graham Mathers, Dave Darby, Tony McCarroll, Dave Moore, Trevor Pitts. Speaking of Trevor, speaking of Trevor, that's without me having a drink. Trevor and Linda asked me to present this on camera to yourself. They said that you would probably have a good idea what it was. They didn't know whether you wanted to open it now or whether you wanted to open it in the quiet of your own home. It's not from Trevor's usual shop. Because of the shape of it, Trent might have suggested it was. Absolutely. So John, here's to your mate. Before I get too carried away, I'd just like to say, enjoy your lazy days and your long lie-ins. There'll be no more getting up at the crack of dawn. I know that's going to piss you off, but Sally and Dawn are absolutely delighted with that. It goes without saying that he will be missed, and I'm not going to go into a long spiel about what a great bloody bloke he is. But he will be missed. He'll be missed by everybody, not the least by me. But he will also be missed by people, sadly by people who probably don't know what they're doing. And there's plenty of them around. The blind lady, the partially sighted springs to mind. However, I'm going to call it a day there before we get too emotional. Ladies and gentlemen, John Austin.